The wider you leave your life open for exposure, the more individuals manage to bring you down. It's a common sociological occurrence that researchers have been attempting to understand for decades, an intriguing and at times brutal facet of human nature that manifests itself in everything from office politics to social networking to holiday gatherings. There's something so compelling about vanishing and working behind the scenes, going dark and vowing to return as the new version of yourself in secret. It can be thrilling because you know that by the time you emerge, your change will catch everyone off guard. The humorous part is, when you finally do come out, you won't even bother with what they think, because you'll have discovered in the darkness that the only opinion that really counts is yours. Disappear and reinvent yourself. Shed what you once were. Disappear. Reinvent yourself. Unchain your soul to roam like a snake sheds its skin, like a bird learns to soar. Disappear and reinvent yourself. Reach up and touch the sky. Each mirror reflects a stranger with eyes that feel at home. Each breath is like the first one under these open skies. I'm turning into somebody bolder, dreamed I'd be, exchanging fear for boundless wonder, exchanging chains for being free. Disappear and reinvent yourself. Leave what you were behind. Disappear and reinvent yourself. Let your spirit loose like a snake that casts off its skin, like a bird learning to soar. Vanish and remake yourself. Stretch out and touch. Mirad zidmi mupropre it's to be see. Mi mefi shil bien all but wandois. This is not merely psychological conjecture or motivational theory. Social psychologists have well documented what they refer to as the tall poppy syndrome, the universal inclination to criticize, resent, attack, or plot against those who have accomplished conspicuous success or are standing out visibly in the act of rising above the norm. It is an old survival method ingrained in human social arrangements, since our earliest tribal existence, when standing out too much, would result in exile, violence, or death. These days, this same prehistoric urge appears in more subtle forms, as backstabbing, discouraging words masquerading as loving criticism, drain on your energy talks that leave you wondering where you're headed, or the mere psychological burden of having to explain and justify your decisions to individuals who simply lack your vision. The bitter irony is that the very individuals you believe most have an interest in your success are usually the ones who have their unconscious vested in keeping you precisely where you are, at the moment. It's seldom ill-intentioned in intent. It's merely human nature functioning below the level of conscious awareness. Your transformation upsets their sense of stability and puts their own sophisticated system of excuses for not endeavoring meaningful change on their own at risk. When you start to excel beyond your current station, you hold up an uncomfortable mirror to their own unrealized potential, and that image is psychologically threatening enough to stimulate defensive behaviors that masquerade as friendship, concern, or realistic advice. The anthropological origins of this behavior are deep. In tiny tribal societies, those that acquired too much power, material possessions, or status had the potential to upset the entire group's survival organization. Keeping everybody more or less equal wasn't merely social preference, it was a matter of life and death for the community. This programming remains in place in our contemporary brains, even though the conditions have entirely changed. Your success no longer jeopardizes anyone's survival, but the primitive programming still triggers, causing unconscious resistance to anyone who has the audacity to substantially better their situation. Recognizing this dynamic is important, because it allows you to see that the resistance you will encounter is not personal, it's instinctual. Humans are not actively seeking to keep you from changing. They're reacting to primeval social impulses, developed over millions of years. Having this awareness can set you free from resentment and enable you to encounter your transformation with strategic thinking instead of emotional reactivity. Let's dive into how to carry out this strategic withdrawal with precision and intelligence. I'm going to dissect this into 3 critical stages that build upon one another in a logical sequence. First is how to vanish properly and entirely from the social radar screen. Second is what to do when you're working in the shadows to ensure your maximum transformation. And third is how to come back strategically when you're ready to return to the world on your own terms. If you screw up any of this, and particularly the last step, you're going to regret it profoundly and likely unravel months or years of earnest inner work. The neuroscience of secrecy and success. So how do we disappear correctly? The most important and first thing is to learn how to close your mouth tightly, and this is way deeper than discretion or secrecy. Your mouth is actually a bigger betrayer than you can ever imagine. and you must learn to put it entirely under your control right away. This is not merely about having secrets. It's about learning the deep psychological, neurological, and social dynamics that happen every time you speak your inner world to other people. Don't tear apart. Look for the fire in your heart. Beyond the night, the morning. Hold on. What he has to tell. Here's the update on my broken ankle. Doc assures me that I'll be fine, only that I'll have to be off my feet for a week or two. Anyway, here's the ticket to the High Teen Carnival. It's too late to turn it in, so you're welcome and let me know how it goes. One couple. New research in neuroscience has discovered intriguing information about what your brain does when you discuss your goals, and you do them quietly. When you speak about your intentions to other people, your brain rewards you with a dopamine release, the same neurochemical reinforcement you would get if you actually made progress toward that goal. This builds what researchers term substitution, satisfaction. Your brain confuses speaking about progress for making actual progress, decreasing your effort to put in the diligent work required of real success. You will no longer share freely with others about your life, your goals, your struggles, your setbacks, your victories, or your progress. That includes your family members who simply wish to assist, your friends who have your best interests at heart, your coworkers who simply want to make conversation, your social media followers who interact with your posts. Absolutely no one receives a glimpse of your inside change anymore. The sole exception would be your life partner, and even that only if you absolutely know without any shadow of doubt that they desire your success and will promote your development without judgment, sabotage, unconscious undermining, or subtle discouragement that so often presents itself as realistic counsel or looking after your best interests. You're going to have very difficulty keeping your mouth in check early on, and that's absolutely normal and to be expected. It's going to take enormous time, effort, and repeated practice, because what you're struggling against isn't simply a bad habit or social conditioning. You're reprogramming millions of years of evolutionary hardwiring that literally is encoded into your DNA. The human impulse we have to communicate details of our lives, our intentions, our difficulties, and our successes is essentially programmed into our DNA for survival and social attachment reasons. In the days of cavemen, telling elaborate stories about your activities, your whereabouts, your resources, your intentions, and your abilities was necessary for tribal survival. Those who talked effectively about their conditions lived longer, were helped more by the group, and were more successful at reproduction. Those who kept all to themselves were usually ostracized or left behind, i.e. death in difficult habitats. But in the modern world, this same impulse now too frequently works against our very interests and destroys our most critical objectives. When you tell others about your transformation goals, a number of self-destructive psychological processes get activated right away. To start with, your brain gets social approval and attention that partially gratifies the underlying need that created the goal in the first place. This diminishes what psychologists refer to as goal tension, the internal pressure that drives persistent action toward fulfillment. Second, you get committed to other people's definition of success, timelines, and expectations, instead of your own true vision. Third, you open your aspirations up to what researchers have termed negative social influence, the tendency for others to unwittingly discourage or minimize your goals based on their own fears and limitations. Psychologists have named this larger trend social reality, the tendency for our vision, self-image, and sense of what's possible to be influenced more by others' responses than our own honest vision and potential. Each time you make a declaration of what you intend, you're automatically looking for approval and validation from your social circle. When you get positive feedback for just expressing your goals, your brain interprets it as partial achievement, lowering dramatically the internal pressure that forces true achievement. You will have to learn to catch thoughts before they exit your lips and become a complete enigma to everyone around you. This involves developing what psychologists refer to as metacognition, self-awareness of your own thinking as it is happening. You'll begin to feel the need to share, the urge to tell your story, the need to explain yourself, the tendency to justify your decisions, the urge to look for reassurance, and the need to translate your internal life into social interaction before these urges become words that sabotage your purpose. At those pivotal moments when you sense the need to talk, you'll exercise the habit of conscious silence, channeling that communication energy back into directed action and furtherance of your objectives. Consider this rechanneled energy to be psychological fuel. Rather than burning it for fleeting social gratification, you're saving it to fuel your true transformation. Only when you become proficient in this basic skill will you know how to move freely in the shadows without perpetually undermining yourself through early disclosure. Imagine yourself undercover in your own life, functioning as a covert agent whose operation is so mission-critical that operational security becomes a matter of life and death. Because in so many ways it absolutely is. Whether your old restricted self dies and how you give birth to who you're capable of being, all hinges on keeping this protective boundary around your change process. The psychology of internal validation. Learning to care about only what you think is the second essential component, and this is likely the most difficult and expansive psychological work you'll ever do in your entire life. No one else's opinion matters any longer, but to say that and truly live it day in and day out is two different things altogether. In order to vanish and remain hidden, you will need to totally reprogram your mind and not care what other people think about you, your decisions, your looks, your perceived progress, your lack of perceived progress, or whatever else about your life. Here's the basic reality that most individuals never discover or come to accept. The overwhelming majority of individuals don't really care as much about you, your existence, or your decisions as you believe. They're simply too busy about their own existence, their own issues, their own self-doubts, their own objectives, and their own self-image to expend a great deal of mental consideration, judging or analyzing your choices. Their focus is mostly internal to their own survival, success, and social status. But the actual issue isn't their focus, or lack of it. It's that you believe they're constantly observing and judging your every step, and that delusional thinking controls most of your behavior and choice-making throughout each and every day. This produces what developmental psychologists refer to as the imaginary audience effect, the pervasive, usually disorienting experience of feeling that others are always observing, scrutinizing, and judging our every action, appearance, and decision. This psychological dynamic usually reaches its peak during adolescence, when being accepted by others seems to be a question of life and death, but never entirely vanishes for most adults. You make countless decisions based not on what you actually desire, or what actually would benefit your goals and real values, but what you think others would think about those decisions if they found out. The imaginary audience effect is so powerful because it works for the most part subconsciously. You're not even aware of it most of the time. You just automatically screen potential actions through an unconscious question. What would people think if they knew I was doing this? Now I'm walking down this deserted street. This unseen filter sifts out millions of possibilities for growth, adventure, authenticity, and success before you ever consciously think them. You must systematically recognize and remove that aspect of yourself that is continually looking for external validation, approval, and permission to be as you are. This has nothing to do with becoming antisocial, narcissistic, and apathetic about others' welfare. This is about building what psychologists refer to as internal locus of control. Rather than being motivated mainly by external rewards, punishments, social approval, and other people's opinions, you become motivated by your own genuine values, vision, and long-term goals. What you need to do is to make a vivid, detailed mental image of yourself in the future, the individual you're becoming through this process of change. This isn't visualization or positive thinking, it's psychological architecture. You need to become utterly fixated with what that future version of yourself would think of your current actions, decisions, habits, and priorities. That future version of yourself becomes the only one that should count from here on out in any major decision. Would your future self be proud of the way you spent the day? Would they be impressed with discipline when tempted or distracted? Would they respect the decisions you made when no one was around and no outside accountability? Would they be thankful for the sacrifices you're undertaking now to make their lives exist? This inner monologue is now your new navigation system, instead of the external approval seeking that's been driving your life without you even noticing. We're so conditioned to seek others' approval that you actually need to trick your brain and use your future self as the other person whose approval you so desperately seek. This builds an essential psychological bridge between other validated needs and intrinsic motivation. You're still looking for approval in a way, but you're looking for it from the most significant individual in your life, who you're becoming. This reframes the strong need for social acceptance into constructive self-growth rather than people-pleasing. By doing this process, you will come to slowly shift from being a puppet performing to the whims and moods and judgments of other individuals, to being more like a master craftsman, diligently and skillfully crafting their finest work. This is not a simple change in thinking, and it requires serious ongoing practice and repetition to get it down pat. You'll find yourself making choices based on what others would think, and you'll need to purposefully refocus that energy towards what your future self would prefer you to do. The neuroscience of how this happens is astounding and thoroughly documented. By repeatedly doing internal validation as opposed to external validation, you literally rewire your brain's reward system on the neural level. The neural circuits involved in seeking approval from others start to atrophy due to disuse, and the circuits involved in intrinsic motivation strengthen and take precedence. This opens up a positive feedback loop where inner satisfaction is truly more rewarding than external validation, and essentially alters your connection to success and achievement. The sacred art of guarding your vision. Then you need to keep your plans entirely concealed, and this principle extends far beyond mere secrecy or discretion. You'll create bold, thrilling plans on this transformational journey, plans that inspire you with possibility, vitality, and hope for what you can create. You'll be dying to share these plans with the people around you, to get their opinion and suggestions, to listen to their support and enthusiasm, to bask in their excitement about your potential, to connect with them over your shared vision of your future. Don't you dare yield to this urge. Keep those plans safely stored in your mind and heart like they have the codes to your most precious treasure, because in the most literal way possible, they do. Here's a vivid way to grasp the magnitude. Picture that each and every bit of your plan that leaks out diminishes your ability to achieve those things by 5%. This isn't merely figurative thinking or motivational hyperbole. There's substantial psychological research supporting this precise dynamic. When we share our goals prematurely with others, several predictable things happen that work systematically against our success and undermine our likelihood of achievement. First, we receive what psychologists call false feedback, positive social responses to our stated intentions, rather than our actual achievements or progress. This fools our brain's reward mechanism into thinking we've already achieved substance when we've done little more than make announcements and be socially validated. The satisfaction and release of dopamine we receive from others' zeal, encouragement, and enthusiasm can actually decrease motivation to do the hard, sustained effort necessary to realize those plans into real-world achievements. Second, making known your plans subjects them to what researchers describe as social gravity, the strong tendency for other people to unknowingly draw down your aspirations to a level that is comfortable, credible, or unthreatening to their own concept of self. Even the most well-intentioned friends and relatives will unintentionally attempt to assist you by diminishing your expectations, highlighting possible hindrances and issues, or proposing more acceptable alternatives that are safer for them. They do this not from ill intent or deliberate sabotage, but through their own psychological limitations, fears, and necessity to preserve their paradigm, where extraordinary change is unthinkable or unlikely. Third, early sharing creates accountability to the wrong crowd altogether. Rather than being accountable most of all to your future self and your true vision, you become accountable to others' expectations, timelines, definitions of success, and comfort levels. This outside pressure can end up stunting the natural, organic growth of your transformation, making you have to show progress to others instead of just making real progress for yourself. Fourth, when you share plans widely, you tend to get advice, suggestions, warnings, and reality checks that can sow seeds of doubt, confusion, or discouragement that weren't planted previously. Other individuals' constraints and previous failures become points of information in your mental model of what is achievable, polluting your vision with their records of defeat or mediocrity. Each time you freely talk about your plans and share them with people for social bonding or approval, you are essentially damaging your prospects for success while indulging their curiosity and your attention needs. Cease being so recklessly liberal with your dreams and become surgically deliberate instead. Your plans are not other people's entertainment. They are not material for small talk, nor are they social bonding tools. They are the holy template for your work in life, and they must be treated with the respect, care, and reverence that really sacred things need. If you absolutely must get particular advice or gain from the expertise of someone to assist you with your planning, then enter these exchanges as military campaigns. Do it with laser accuracy and deliberate intent. Make sure to approach the right person, one who has actually done what you're trying to do, or who has relevant knowledge and experience you really need. Disclose only the bare minimum needed to obtain the exact information you need. Get that knowledge as quickly as possible and vanish again at once without making the interaction into a social experience or long-term relationship. Think of these strategic consultations as intelligence gathering operations. You have one particular mission. You locate the correct source. You get the intelligence you require through targeted questioning, and you pull clean without leaving evidence of your larger operation or overall strategy. You don't make friends along the way. You don't unnecessarily socialize. You don't make it a bonding experience or ongoing mentorship. You receive what you set out to receive, with the security and integrity of your operation intact. The military metaphor is not hyperbolic. Your change is continually in danger from good-hearted individuals, unaware of the psychological forces involved. Safeguarding your plans takes the same intensity of operational security that a military mission requires, because the stakes are equally high. The distinction between success and failure, more often than not, comes down to your capacity for sustaining the internal pressure and clarity that fuels consistent action, and that pressure evaporates quickly when subjected to social forces. The invisible progress principle. You also have to keep your progress completely secret from all the people around you, and this may be the most psychologically challenging aspect of the whole process, because progress feels so darn good to share, celebrate, and get noticed for. Progress will occur if you're doing the work regularly, and it might take a while to show up visibly, but it will absolutely arrive in ways that amaze and thrill you. You'll find that improvement comes all the more easily and naturally when you withdraw from social gaze and cease doing your development for others. But by no means should you allow anyone to witness such improvements as they're happening. Don't parade your improved body, even when others begin complimenting you on how different you look and inquiring what you've been doing. Don't flaunt your wealthier status or better financial position, even when you feel like celebrating having achieved significant milestones. Don't showcase your new knowledge or expertise, even when naturally presented opportunities allow you to impress others or gain accolades for acquiring it. Simply concentrate solely on moving further along, utilizing each minor triumph as motivation for the next step of advancement, instead of as content for external validation. This principle succeeds because it avoids what psychologists refer to as premature celebration syndrome. If we reveal our progress too early along the way, we typically get a large release of dopamine from other people's notice, compliments, and enthusiasm regarding our accomplishments. This neurochemical payment tastes very much like the reward we would receive for making even further progress, but we're getting it early just for demonstrating what we've achieved thus far. This leads to a psychological false summit in which our mind is convinced that we have arrived at our destination, while we've only finished the initial part of the journey. The neuroscience of success shows that our brain is wired to feel pleased when we achieve social acknowledgement for our efforts. It was evolutionarily advantageous as survival and reproductive success were often dependent on social standing. But in contemporary contexts concerned with long-term improvement, this same system can be counterproductive for us by triggering excess satisfaction ahead of time, which stifles our motivation to keep striving to improve. Vanishing is only valuable if it takes you all the way through the whole transformation process, from start to finish, uninterrupted. Returning to your pre-transition patterns of sharing and boasting during transformation will likely undo a lot of the progress you've made, and you'll end up back around square one. Psychologically, this is because going back to external validation reactivates those old neural circuits and undermines the internal motivation system that you're carefully cultivating through consistent practice. You will experience strong, almost desperate impulses to talk about the changes you're experiencing in your life. This impulse will strike you hardest when you reach key milestones, experience significant breakthroughs, or when others begin to notice changes and ask pointed questions about what you've been doing differently. These are key tests of your devotion to the process. You'll need to stretch the muscle of your willpower on a regular basis and hold it all inside of you, even when sharing would be natural, just, or socially acceptable. Utilize that sharing energy to fuel your efforts even more, rather than use it as energy waste by burning up that enthusiasm and passion in the momentary social gratification. You're reusing it and churning it into motivation for still more effort and striving. This produces what systems theorists refer to as a closed loop, in which your progress creates energy that propels even more progress, instead of an open loop in which progress energy is spent through social sharing. Consider your progress to be a savings account that compounds best when you don't take withdrawals. Each time you pull some of that progress out to use on social validation, you break the compounding effect and cut the end result in half. But when you allow that progress to quietly build up and invest all the energy into further development, it builds exponentially, since every improvement is stacked upon all prior improvements without interference or energy loss. This principle also shields you from what researchers refer to as social anchoring, the tendency for others' responses to your improvement to affect your own evaluation of what you've done and what you can do next. When others react with wonder at fairly modest gains, you may unwittingly adopt their evaluation that you've already done something impressive, lowering your internal standards and expectations for further improvement. The forge of individual strength. Lastly, and most importantly for your long-term growth, you need to keep your struggles, failures, setbacks, and emotional suffering from the outside world. Entering this shadow mode is going to be intensely difficult, harder mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically than you could ever possibly envision at this moment. You're going to be tired on levels you didn't know existed, mentally tired beyond what you knew was possible, emotionally drained from confronting your fears and limitations, and you may literally bleed or cry after experiencing obstacle after obstacle standing in the way between you and your progress. What would your natural, deeply ingrained instinct be at every wall you encounter? What would be most soothing and reassuring when you're having a hard time dealing with significant setbacks, wondering if you've even set realistic goals, or doubting whether you have what it takes to make this work? You'd likely want to complain about your struggles to a good friend who would listen to you with sympathy, seek comfort and reassurance from your loved family members, or look for a sympathetic ear that would appreciate your struggles and remind you that change is difficult for everybody and that you're not unique in having to endure these trials. You already know what I'm going to say. You'll have to cut that impulse off entirely and work your pain, confusion, doubt, and struggle alone. This is not about becoming emotionally withdrawn, psychologically unwell, or isolated from all human connection. It's about being able to work difficulty in a manner that creates real strength, resilience, and self-reliance, instead of finding relief in methods that ultimately drain your internal resources and erode your autonomy. Scream into the wind if you must cry. Allow those tears to flow freely when pressure is too much. Punch a pillow when furious. Repair your psychological wounds with what inner resources you possess, but do it all yourself in the comfort of your own quarters. Do it in the shadows where your struggle becomes your strength, rather than your story for others to hear, analyze, and respond to. Let each difficult moment build your character and resilience instead of becoming material for others' sympathy, advice, or attempts to rescue you from necessary growth experiences. This individual processing of challenge performs several key psychological and developmental roles that are simply not possible through outside help systems. One is that it builds what researchers refer to as distress tolerance, your ability to be present with uncomfortable feelings, uncertainty, confusion, and challenge without immediately finding relief, escape, or rescue from external sources. That ability becomes absolutely necessary for any real transformation, because real transformation always entails long stretches of working through uncertainty, discomfort, and challenge without resolution. Second, overcoming challenges on your own creates authentic self-efficacy, profound, unshakable faith in your power to solve problems, overcome challenges, and manage whatever life throws your way through your own inner resources and ingenuity. With each struggle you overcome without rescue or external aid, you demonstrate to yourself at the core level that you're stronger, more capable, and more resourceful than you ever imagined. This self-awareness becomes indomitable because it's rooted in real lived experience instead of others' encouragement, reassurance, or motivational speeches. Third, quiet struggle guards against what psychologists refer to as learned helplessness, the insidious process of becoming psychologically reliant on other people's support, counsel, and intervention, increasingly losing faith in your own problem-solving capacity and inner strength. When you repeatedly look to others for comfort, direction, or rescue when things get tough, you unknowingly train yourself to think that you can't cope with major issues on your own. This defeats the very independence, self-sufficiency, and inner strength that are necessary for transformation and that make the outcomes maintainable in the long term. Fourth, processing pain privately allows you to develop what philosophers and psychologists call anti-fragility, the ability to not just survive difficulty, but to actually become stronger because of it. When you seek outside comfort during difficult times, you often get relief that prevents the full psychological adaptation from occurring. It's like taking painkillers during exercise. You avoid the discomfort, but you also prevent the strength building that the discomfort was supposed to catalyze. Allow each rock bottom moment, each failure or setback experience, each doubt about yourself to be the springboard that launches you to the next level of ability and inner power. It's particularly in those moments of greatest pain, greatest challenge, and deepest doubt that a new you can come into being, but only if you let the pressure shape you into something stronger than you are now, and not look for relief from the pressure that does not allow you to be shaped. Embracing that hurt and going as far as to cultivate appreciation for it, because you'll find that your ability to deal with adversity is identical to your ability to accomplish extraordinary feats. The individuals who perform remarkable change aren't those who shun adversity or have convenient existence. They're individuals who learn to dance with adversity until it turns out to be their friend, instructor, and the origin of their maximum power. This is not about asking for unnecessary pain or glorifying suffering. This is about understanding that growth and discomfort are two inseparable partners and learning to invite the discomfort because you know it's the cost of becoming whom you wish to become. When you create this friendship with challenge, you become invincible because you're no longer scared of the very things that immobilize most people. The architecture of total transformation. Now we're ready for the proper transformation phase, where all your preparatory work really starts to reward you handsomely in real change, growth, and quantifiable progress toward your vision. You must first select your targets and be precisely clear about what you're going to change, all the way down to details that most would find excessive or obsessive. This is not about defining general vague things you can do, like get in shape, earn more money, or be happier. If you are to become something truly significant along the way, you have to know precisely what that something is, with specificity that comes close to being mathematical. Do you want to be completely jacked and physically unrecognizable with certain body fat percentage, muscle measurements, strength benchmarks, and athletic abilities that are your idea of the perfect physical you? Do you want to establish a money-making business or career that generates a definite monthly income, targets a specific marketplace, and provides you with total financial independence to live the life of your choice? Do you want to become an expert in a trade that positions you in the top 10% of professionals globally with defined competencies and acknowledged credentials? Do you desire to produce creative work that communicates your innermost vision and impacts people's lives in particular ways? Whatever your aim, be precise about what you intend to achieve. The psychology of particular goal setting is widely reported in performance research. Fuzzy goals yield fuzzy results because they do not give your brain clear targets to shoot for or quantifiable standards to assess progress against. When you tell your subconscious you need to get into shape, it doesn't know what you mean by that. Maybe it means losing 5 pounds, running a mile straight through, or even competing in bodybuilding events. This uncertainty leads to what psychologists refer to as goal conflict, when various segments of your brain operate towards various meanings of the same objective, dispersing energy and minimizing performance. But when you define precisely what you desire to accomplish with numerical specificity, measurable results, and definite timelines, your brain starts to see opportunities, resources, and avenues available to get to that exact goal. This effect, known as the reticular activating system in neurobiology, is your brain's sorting mechanism that decides what information from your world reaches conscious awareness. When you have particular objectives, this system becomes attuned to observe anything related to the accomplishment of those objectives. Write down these particular objectives in explicit terms and place them in several locations where you can view them every day. But keep in mind that absolutely no other person can ever look at these objectives or know the particular details. They become your personal mission statement, your own constitution, your secret proclamation of whom you're becoming. Read them every day, see them in your mind's eye with as vivid a sensory detail as you can muster, and have them inform every important choice you make throughout your transformation phase. Specificity, however, is not enough to create lasting motivation. Your goals must be linked to more profound emotional motivation, the why of your what that gives you fuel when it gets tough. This emotional connection gives you the psychological energy that sustains you as you go through the process when it gets uncomfortable, dull, or seemingly impossible. Not only do you need to ask yourself what you want, but why doing so is important to you at the core. How will your life be different in tangible, specific ways? How will you feel about yourself when you pass in front of a mirror? What will become possible in your relationships, career, and personal fulfillment that isn't currently possible? Environmental architecture for achievement. Second, you must organize all of your life around crushing these goals with the one-track mind of a person whose very life literally hangs in the balance of success. Every waking moment should be schemed and orchestrated to propel toward goals with merciless efficiency and unshakable focus. This isn't about achieving some mythical work-life balance. This is about total life integration around your transformation, where everything either serves your goals directly or supports your ability to serve your goals. Be completely obsessed with your transformation in the healthiest, most sustainable way possible. You must cultivate the mindset that this is your one chance in life, your one chance to become who you have the potential to be. So commit each breath and each decision to seeing it through. Every activity should be deliberate and put together to either directly promote your objectives or to preserve your physical, mental, and emotional ability to advance your objectives regularly over a period of time. This degree of integration demands what environmental psychologists term environmental design, creating your physical, social, and electronic environment to facilitate the behaviors you wish to cultivate while removing or reducing environmental elements that counteract your goals. Relocate to an apartment or home that is situated near the gym, training area, or workplace that serves your makeover. If that is not an option, select your living arrangement based on the support it provides for your daily habits, instead of convenience, social considerations, or expense. Place yourself surrounded entirely by books, tools, equipment, and resources directly associated with your objectives. Design a physical environment that repeatedly reinforces what you are striving for and makes it as effortless as possible to perform the behaviors that result in progress. Take classes, groups, communities, or organizations that offer routine practice opportunities and expose you to people who are genuinely committed to similar goals. But be sure to keep your secrecy regarding your particular goals and progress. Timebox your whole day, such that you're dedicating several concentrated, uninterrupted hours on your direct, immediate work toward your transformation every single day of the week. This is not about squeezing time for your goals when it is convenient or when other commitments permit. It is about setting your goals as the fixed center to which everything else orbits and adjusts. Schedule specific, reserved blocks of time for designing your method, rehearsing major skills, acquiring new knowledge, and carrying out the specific actions that propel your transformation measurably. Create a schedule to have regular sessions for reviewing your plan, refining your approach based on what you learn from experience, measuring your progress with objective metrics, and segmenting bigger goals into smaller, immediately actionable steps that you can perform consistently. Do absolutely everything you need to do to be successful, and be prepared to sacrifice anything that doesn't contribute to your transformation or actively works against it. This may involve refusing to attend social activities that do not support your plans or bleed energy away from your work. It may involve breaking relationships that persistently drain your energy, erode your confidence, or draw you back into previous patterns of thinking and behaving. It may involve altering your daily routine, your lifestyle, your career direction, or your social network altogether. The amount of commitment that is necessary for true transformation is complete and unyielding, and anything less than that yields fragmented results at best. The neuroplasticity revolution. Third, and most deeply, you have to totally reprogram your mind, so that happiness, satisfaction, and fulfillment mean destroying your goals and making quantifiable progress toward your vision. You're going to have to become truly in love with this vanishing act, with the training that it takes, with the loneliness it necessitates, and with the person you are becoming as a result. You'll have to get used to loving, working behind the scenes, and making accomplishments that no one can notice, honor, or affirm. It will all be weird, awkward, and occasionally isolating in the beginning, because you're reconfiguring reward mechanisms that have been built up over decades or decades of your existence. But over time, with repeated practice and mindful intention, you'll catch yourself actually liking the pain, the invisibility, the delayed reward, and the deep sense of fulfillment that comes from being your own source of validation and motivation. This change involves a deep change in the way you perceive satisfaction, reward, happiness, and success itself. Rather than aiming to find pleasure mainly from outside yourself, other people's approval, quick gratification, comfort, entertainment, social contact, or consumption, you come to find deep, abiding satisfaction within the process of growth itself. This is what psychologists refer to as intrinsic motivation, deriving real reward in the action itself, and not an external validation of the action. The neuroscience behind this transformation is astounding and holds out hope for anyone willing to take the process on. When you consistently choose long-term satisfaction over short-term pleasure, when you repeatedly select internal validation over external approval, when you persistently choose growth over comfort, you literally change your brain's physical structure at the neural level. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, long-term planning, and delayed gratification, becomes stronger and more active. The limbic system, which is geared to instant gratification and emotional reactivity, recedes in your thought process. This neuroplasticity implies that what earlier needs great willpower, constant attention, and repeated conscious decision starts getting done automatically, naturally, and really preferred. The self-control that was imposed and hard at the start turns into your default operating mode. You lose the need to seek outside approval, because inner fulfillment becomes truly more satisfying. You cease to shun difficulty, because you've learned experientially that challenge is where growth resides, and growth is where satisfaction is. It's a whole reprogramming of your mind's operating system, and it will be an integral part of your positive change that goes far beyond any particular goals you're striving for. Welcome this transformation, and actively work at bringing it about within yourself, by way of conscious choice and repeated practice. Notice when old patterns of thought occur, and deliberately replace them with the new patterns. Acknowledge little wins to oneself privately and quietly. Enjoy the process sincerely, instead of just concentrating on results or on exterior accolades. This reconditioning of the mind also includes what cognitive scientists refer to as identity transformation, transforming how you perceive yourself at the most fundamental level. Rather than viewing yourself as a person who requires others' validation to feel good, you become a person who creates satisfaction from within. Rather than viewing yourself as a person who shuns adversity, you become a person who welcomes challenge as the doorway to expansion. Rather than viewing yourself as being dependent on outside conditions for happiness, you become a person who creates your own conditions through disciplined action. The ripple effect of true being. You will still be going after big goals and striving for larger, more significant things, but the energy and motivation that fuel this endeavor will be entirely different from what motivated you previously. Rather than frantic struggling to prove yourself or nervous hanging on to particular outcomes, you will be playfully experimenting with what you can do. Rather than anxious grasping to outcomes or identity through achievement, you'll cultivate assured release that enables you to take greater risks and aim for more compelling goals, without your sense of self being tied to any specific outcome. You'll be sort of a mystery to most of the people in your life, and you'll find that that mystery is not merely a tactical benefit for social interference avoidance, it's a wellspring of deep personal liberty. When other people don't have preconceptions about who you are, what you can do, or what you should be doing with your life, you're free to keep reinventing yourself without having to fight through other people's expectations, restrictions, or obsolete understandings of who you are. You'll find a profound, soothing peace that arises from working in the shadows you've deliberately chosen. This is not the peace of passivity or withdrawal from the problems of life. It's the peace that results from understanding you can deal with whatever happens because you've established unshakable faith in your own resourcefulness, resilience, and capacity to improvise. You'll discover a new way of living that you prefer much more than what you previously had, because it's totally true to your innermost values and linked to your highest potential. The control of unseen power. This is the greatest gift of strategic withdrawal, the realization that the person you were attempting to become was already within you all the time, hiding in the background, waiting for you to gather the courage to encounter them, own them, and be them completely. The change isn't about acquiring something new to bring to yourself. It's about eliminating all that was standing between your true self and coming into expression in the world. When you are a master of this shadow work, you are among the giants of history, who knew the true power lies not in social posturing or other people's approval, but in the unmovable strength that arises when you learn to stand fully in your own truth. You become a person who can lead without needing followers, influence without intention, and make a difference just by being yourself in a world of people playing copies of who they are supposed to be. The shadows also taught you the greatest lesson of all, which is that you are enough exactly as you are, and also capable of becoming more than you ever thought was possible. This contradiction, total self-acceptance, and boundless growth opportunity becomes the basis for a life of purpose, influence, and profound contentment that no outside accomplishment could ever impart. This is why individuals who become proficient at strategic withdrawal seldom desire to completely reappear in the social limelight. They've learned something much more valuable than social accolades or outside approval. They discovered themselves, and in discovering themselves, they discovered everything they ever wanted.